I want to bring in the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Republican Congressman Ed Royce from California. Sir, thanks so much for joining us. You just heard Peter Bergen's assessment of where the fight is, that ISIS is being pushed back in Iraq, but they are maintaining stranglehold on parts of Syria. Is that correct? And do you think the U.S. is winning this war against ISIS?
I think, Jake, the size of territory they hold right now is about the size of Great Britain. And it's interesting to look at this battle in Kobani, where, yes, you know, the Syrian Kurds pushed them out. ISIS lost maybe 2,000 fighters, but that town is now uninhabitable. The hope that the Kurds have is that they now move into Mosul. But, you know, that's an inhabited city. So clearly this is going to be a horrific battle between ISIS and the Kurds. And, of course, we lend the air support for this campaign. So I think at this point, the answer to that question is they have been able to recruit just as fast, if not faster, than the losses on the battlefield. So this is very much a situation where it's a close-run battle between ISIS and ISIS.
Can't say the U.S. coalition is winning at this point.
Well, I think we're definitely degrading, but as long as they're able to use social media so effectively to bring new recruits in, and as long as the Turkish government hasn't effectively sealed that border, we're going to see additional ISIS fighters joining the battle.
Why hasn't Turkey effectively sealed the border?
You know, I'm not sure. I don't know if it's just very difficult for them to do, or if, as part of their negotiations, as you know, they would like to have a no-fly zone to protect the Sunni population in the north of Syria, and they've not been all that cooperative because we haven't given ground on that idea of preventing the aerial bombardment by the Syrian forces of the Sunni refugee population in the north. So it's a rather complicated negotiation that's going on.
As this fight against ISIS intensifies, there's also this question and debate about what is driving the threat. A lot of people in counterterrorism and others say this is radical Islam. You heard the British Prime Minister say something similar a few weeks ago. But I want you to listen to part of an exchange between President Obama and CNN's own Fareed Zakaria.
I reject a notion that somehow that creates a religious war, because the overwhelming majority of Muslims reject that interpretation of Islam. They don't even recognize it as being Islam. And I think that for us to be successful in fighting this scourge, it's very important for us to align ourselves with the 99.9% of Muslims who are looking for the same thing we're looking for.
There's a real reluctance by President Obama, and before him, President Bush, to make this a war against radical Islam or anything associated with Islam. There's a reluctance to identify this as part of the religion. What's your take on this? Some people say that this reveals a blindness by this administration and the previous one.
Well, I think the technical term is Islamist in order to distinguish it from the religion, but to explain that this is a political movement. You know, it's an ideology, an Islamist ideology. I think it's important to make that distinction. And I think with that, it allows us to identify exactly what we're struggling against, while at the same time putting us on the side of the overwhelming majority of Muslim population, which is against ISIS.
I know that there's a lot of reluctance by U.S. policymakers to talk about this American aid worker who is in ISIS custody right now, being held as a prisoner hostage. I guess the question that I would ask is, is the U.S. government in any way communicating with ISIS, either through an intermediary? Is there any sort of attempt to negotiate or even to talk to ISIS?
Jake, I don't know the answer to that, but part of the difficulty in beginning to pay ransom is that extortion and ransom are two of the main ways that ISIS gets its money. So, for example, Italians, French, Swiss businessmen, they're very likely to be abducted and held for ransom. The UK and the United States have long had a position of not paying ransom, and the reason is because ransom actually feeds the activities and makes it possible to recruit. For that reason, we have not walked down that road, and neither did Abiy. You know, when Abiy was asked to pay $200 million...
The Japanese Prime Minister, yeah.
The Japanese Prime Minister, He said instead, you know, we'll put that $200 million in to help those who are fighting ISIS, you know, to help those displaced people and others struggling.
We're not, so we won't negotiate. But let me ask you,
yeah.
philosophically, is there really that big a difference between the U.S. government negotiating with the Taliban to get Bo Bergdahl back, Sergeant Bo Bergdahl, and negotiating with ISIS to get back this American aid worker? What's the difference? They could negotiate with the Taliban, but not ISIS? I don't...
Well, Jake, that is why some of us, myself included, spoke out against this original negotiation, because those 5 Taliban operatives, 2 of them were senior commanders who were responsible for the death of 5,000 religious minorities in Afghanistan that they had liquidated simply for the political beliefs of those people when they controlled that area. So it showed us, just the release of those 5, how dangerous that is. 30% return, approximately, to the battlefield. And
right.
we know one of those 5 is trying to return to the battlefield. So it's another example of why it's a bad policy to negotiate and either pay ransom or release terrorists. It just feeds the beast.
Congressman Ed Royce, Chairman of the House Foreign Relations Committee, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.